Tonight's chapter of Hypercosmic Odyssey is called Nomad. So this is I'm going to be reading for probably about 3 minutes. For the now 14-year-old Alex Morgan and his younger brothers Edward, Eric, and Eli, almost an entire year of their lives lived on Atalanta had revealed itself to have been a true godsend. Alex had occasionally been asked to lend a hand with small engineering duties that would pop up and require manual attention. The issues would never be anything major, with the most abundant of problems appearing to be overfrosted pipes, frayed wiring, and dirty air scrubbers. Every time he'd been asked to help, the boy had not only thrived in his duties, but typically gone above and beyond what had been requested, often leaving machines running better than they had before. Because of this arrangement, Alex had formed a close bond with the ship's lead mechanic, a rowdy boulder of a man named Bluperonius McFadden. When introducing himself, McFadden had told Alex to call him what everyone else does, Blue. During Alex's time with the mechanic, the boy had opened up enough to tell Blue that he and his brothers were headed towards a home that he hadn't seen in almost 2 years. It was then that he'd learned Blue had been born on a USAW space station called Celephon S3, but that it had been decommissioned over a decade before. I know colonies close up shop a lot less than stations, but these days you never know. My suggestion is, once you get there, stay put. Enjoy the home you've got while you've still got it. They say home is the people you surround yourself with, but I don't know. These ships have never felt quite like home to me. This perspective had struck a chord with Alex, and he'd been unable to shake the thought for weeks. He'd been running for so long from his past and his regrets that fears of returning home to a colony without any of his loved ones were hard to shake. Thankfully, this anxiety wasn't something that Edward, Eric, or Eli succumbed to. To Alex's disbelief, the three boys had been surprisingly capable of readjusting to a life on the Lam, especially after the events of their freedom flight from Odessa. In the 10 months that the boys had all been sharing a medium-sized storage compartment in the Atalanta's cargo hold, Alex had learned that all three of the B-blips that he'd saved had very different personalities, and that maybe the burden of parentage wasn't something he was particularly quite ready for yet. Edward was strong-willed and manipulative, but he was also more protective of the younger two than even Alex was. The 9-year-old always kept his eye on the other ship employees, typically choosing to keep his distance over jumping into social interactions. Eric, the 8-year-old, was easily the most sensitive and emotional of the bunch. He was also consistently surprising Alex with a positive, hopeful outlook and imaginary stories about what they're all going to find and do upon arriving to Chinsen. Eli, the youngest at 7, had been the biggest trouble. The boy was perfectly friendly and happy to follow orders. However, curiosity was the boy's main driving function. More than once, Alex had been called to locations of the ship deemed off-limits for children in order to collect the child and return him to the cargo hold. In the second month of their trip, Eli had slipped up 3 times in front of the rest of the crew when he had called Alex by his real name. It had happened once during breakfast with the entire crew in the galley, but because of everyone talking over each other, Nux was pretty sure nobody had heard. Both other times had been in front of Blue when he'd come to collect him for another job. Blue had never asked, but Nux had waved it away while soldering an exposed wire by saying, Nux is just a name Eli sometimes calls me. He had a hard time saying Alex when he was a baby. It's just a nickname. He'd been grateful when the only response Blue had given was a simple nod. The man hadn't even looked up from the sparks. On many nights, after the 3 younger boys had gone to bed, Nux had laid awake in his gently swaying hammock, unable to sleep. He would think about Grimshaw, Victor, and Rom. In his final speech to the 3, he'd told them the truth of why he was betraying them, but he hadn't mentioned what he'd instructed Huang Ju to do to Sabrina. He hoped that they weren't harboring a hatred for him, that they weren't hunting him in an attempt to gain revenge or save her and the kids. Rom had always seemed to like Nux, more than he did Sabrina at least, so the boy wasn't very concerned about running from a killer robot. He was also pretty sure that Captain Grimshaw was too level-headed of a man to succumb to a vendetta, but Victor Nux still had nightmares about him. Other nights, he would think about Odessa and what he'd chosen to leave behind. For the few weeks he had to himself on the planet, Nux had been happy, close to the happiest that he'd ever been. For the first time in his life, he'd been given not just freedom, but the safety to enjoy it. He'd started forming a friendship with Karina and had been filled with joy to see Ketch do the same with Laszlo. It was hard to think about Ketch. Every time he did, Nux's stomach felt like it was filling with stones. Instead, he thought about Bobby, Roz, and Darren, unsure that the three of them would ever be capable of rising to the occasion expected of them by this Lord Vasily. It was typically during these thoughts that Commander Haas would overtake the boys' memories. Nux could see the middle-aged man's crooked smile as he told him to choose between the innocent lives of the Beeblips and his own. To Nux, the idea of Haas came to represent the worst within himself. The man's name conjured up Nux's own darkness, memories of the Cranulus and watching Huang Ju inject Sabrina's medical cocoon with poison. Huang Ju had asked Nux then, "You sure this is what you want to do?" Sabrina had been laying there unconscious, defenseless. Whenever thinking about the moment, Nux would hear his own voice repeating, as if trapped within an echo chamber. Yes, do it. What he'd done to Sabrina had been personal, and after the loss, he'd promised himself never to use violence again against an innocent. When Haas had provided the boy with an ultimatum residing within his worst fears, the only answer he could think of for himself was refusal, sacrifice, a baptism by fire. Maybe I'll get it right in the next life, he'd thought to himself as he'd stepped off the platform, ready for a fiery end. Thankfully for Nux, his next life had come much sooner than expected. After 10 months and 6 stops on planetary colonies and space stations along the northwest rim of the PMAX side of the Killslayer cluster, the day had come. The Atalanta was finally arriving on Chienson. Nux had woken up that morning by a ship-wide comm call from the Atalanta's captain, a tight-lipped, by-the-book, but friendly elderly woman named Tasha Kor. "Good morning, crew. Landing on planetoid designate CM321V 226 PMAC colony of Jensen will take place 2 hours from now. Landing crew, begin preparing docking maneuvers."
Nux wakes with a start as he's had a lot of sleepless nights, knowing that he's about to go back to the colony that he left so many years ago. He keeps replaying a lot of the events of the past that have brought him to this, just like the prologue kind of states. In the memory of jumping off the the scaffolding into this moment where he never thought he'd wake up. Now that he understands what the armor did for him, he starts seeing other options that could have been available to him had he not chosen a life of pacifism. In his head, he sees himself dive at Haas and take him over the edge, knowing that Haas could not possibly have flown out of that. He sees himself thinking of other ways that he could have stopped the first child from going over. But in all that, he wakes to a start when this woman mentions it. These sleepless nights have made it really difficult on him to keep shit together. So let's see what's in the room. What is he? Because I know these guys are in the cargo bay, so I'm assuming there's a bunch of other riffraff tearing about.
Yeah, lots of boxes, barrels, crates, and you and the 3 boys each have hammocks that are like hanging between rivets on the walls.
Oh, cool. So it's like old shipmate rules.
Yeah, like World War II type shit.
Yeah, so he kind of hops out of bed and he rubs his eyes for a minute. So is there a hierarchy that's formed? Like, do the boys respond to him a certain way?
It's by age.
Okay, so it's literally like Ed's at the top, Eric, and then Eli at the bottom.
Yes, so it goes Edward, Eric, Eli.
As Nux gets up, he gets started from his sleep. He sees Ed is he's already awake, and so I don't know what he's up to, but he could tell that Ed's out of his hammock. Ed is already out of his hammock, and then so Nux as soon as he gets through the thoughts of his own waking experience, he just looks for the kids. Ed's missing. Eric is Eric seems to be slumbering sweetly, and Eli seems to be almost like willfully upside down, as if he was like about to have a gag before everyone went to sleep. So he was like waiting for someone to find him in his stupid looking his stupid looking hang. And then he just kind of like looks around for Ed. But is there anyone else? Is there anyone else who stowed with us?
Not right now. It's a small. You'll find out it's a smaller ship. It's like 15 people ship. So like you guys, since you paid to be on board, you don't have rooms, but everybody else that's on the crew has rooms upstairs.
Oh, okay. So it's just crew and then us. Okay.
Yeah. So roll an observation to see if you can see Ed.
All right, we got it.
All right. So as Nux, gets up out of the hammock, rubbing his eyes, he kind of hears. He doesn't see Ed anywhere, but he hears over to his left, behind a sort of like an area of crates where over the last 10 months, he and the boys had sort of put together like a little like box maze. He hears the sound of Edward being like, "Damn it, why won't you just work? Why won't you just work?" And so he's over there somewhere.
Okay. Nux, upon hearing that, recognizing it, he kind of looks at the other boys. He kind of sneaks himself out of the hammock, and knowing the route very well to this little maze that they built, he picks a location that he knows is above it, or near it enough that he can try and understand what Ed is doing.
Okay, go ahead and roll a mobility to sneak. All right. So as Nux climbs his way up onto the top of this thing, he's sort of sitting on a metal beam rafter above the entire maze, so he's got bird's eye view. He can see where Ed is, and Ed is trying to line up this like really, really long row of dominoes throughout the whole maze, and he's trying to like set it up so he can flick it through the entire maze, but they keep falling over as he's doing it, and he's getting frustrated.
Oh, that's so sweet. Nux kind of like looks down, and he's just like, Ed.
He hears you, and he kind of like looks around, and he's like, Nux.
And then he looks up. He looks down at him. He's just like, you gotta wait until we're in the drift. Right now we're in slow burn, so the momentum of those chips is always going to make them fall.
And he looks up, and he's like, how'd you get up there, man?
You gotta be when you live as long as I have, you get a lot of opportunities to learn how to sneak around.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool. So, you said when we kind of slow down, it'll work?
Yeah, you just gotta wait until we're in the drift. And he kind of just like indicates, and he kind of looks at whatever clock or digital interface they may have around them, and he kind of goes, "That's probably going to be in the next 30 minutes."
He's like, "Okay, all right, sweet. I'm gonna go upstairs and get something for breakfast then."
Well, let's get the boys. And then he just kind of like hops out of the rafters and pulls himself down.
Okay. So Edward goes over, and he basically is like, "Wake up, guys, wake up. It's time to go. It's changing day. Let's get some breakfast." And like the younger ones are just like, "Man, I don't want to get up, man." I'm like grumbly and stuff.
So Nux kind of like leans in, and he's like, "Well, look, if the sooner you get out of bed, the earlier we get off this fucking ship. And I think you're ready for that, right?"
Fine, yeah. And like both Eric and Eli drag themselves out, and like they're doing the thing where like the head's tilted back, and they're like their eyes are closed, and they're walking like zombies.
Yeah. So Nux kind of takes a look at the cargo hold, and he just makes sure, he's just like, you know what? Just in case we ship off after breakfast, I want to make sure you guys have everything. Why don't you run your hammocks real quick?
So they go ahead and clean them up. They like,
all right, let's go get some grub.
So when you head upstairs, you see that the galley to the ship is pretty much empty, and the kids all take their spots around the table, and Edward, as the oldest, and as he's wont to do because he's so protective of the youngers, he fills their bowls up with like the standard sort of, because this is not a military ship, this is a cargo ship, so this is just a private ship, a group of people working. Like they usually haul ice or deliveries to smaller worlds from Odessa, because Odessa, at least before Darren's attack, was so heavily involved in aid to smaller colonies that didn't have as many resources. So this was just one of the mini ships that like does those kind of things for Odessa. The food that they eat is pretty standard fare. There's some some corporate food from PMAC, like freeze dried. But because they make stops on Odessa, they also have their own stock of, frozen meat that they can cook and frozen vegetables that they get from the jungle. So there's a lot of food, but then at the same time, there's also like the junk food, and he fills all of their bowls up with like a very sugary cereal, and pours in a like very synthetic purple milk, and then they all just kind of like go to town on it.
Yeah, so Nux kind of like looks around, and he's like taking stock of the galley. He just starts taking things, but he's doing it like judiciously. He's not doing it in a way that's like, I need to rip off these people who helped us get this far. He's doing it in a way that he's just like, they probably won't miss this, they probably won't miss that kind of thing.
He remembers overhearing conversations about how they're planning on restocking up on sundry items on Shiensen.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe he's kind of like thinking about the long haul, and so maybe he overemphasizes the sugary treats that they like, and then he heads off to the captain's, okay. the bridge.
All right. The bridge of the Atalanta was much smaller than that of the Carnunculus. That ship had been designed to military specs and was comfortable holding a crew of over 500. The Atalanta, being a smaller commercial hauler, was rated for a crew of only 15. It was also a ship without any kind of weapons array. Instead, Captain Kor had chosen to spend the majority of her money on defensive measures. As Nux entered the bridge to the sound of a k-ch as the double doors slide open for him, he sees Captain Kor sitting at a monitor, examining the current state of the ship's fuel reserves. To her left, sitting on top of a console counter and chewing his fingernails, is Blue. Both turn to look at Nux as he enters. So with a big smile, Blue says, "Hey, there he is. Guess you've got a big day ahead of you, huh?"
Nux kind of like nods at Blue, like in a way of just like complete deference and respect. He's like, "Thanks for getting us so far, old man."
"Hey, buddy, you did it yourself. One of my favorite little mechanics." And then, like, sitting a couple seats away from him behind a computer console, leaning back super casually, Nux sees Captain Kor, and she goes, "Good morning, Alex."
And like Nux kind of like forgets that that's what his name was for a second. He just goes, "So how are we looking? Are you guys excited to drop us off finally?"
And she goes,
"Get rid of it," or he says like, "To get rid of us."
And they both kind of chuckle, and Captain Kor goes, "Now, you know that I've told you before, you're more than welcome to stay on longer. You and the boys have all been very good. They're good little custodians. Eli loves to walk up and down the ship's hallways with a mop. We all are a big fan of that. But we understand if you need to leave, and you'll have our long call called if you ever change your mind."
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we may take you up on that.
And Blue's like, "You guys got any? You and the little bros have any plans for today?"
You know, I got to find out what time it's going to be when we get there, and really start to see what state things are in. Because last time I saw this place, it was rubble.
And the captain looks over sort of at one of the digital readouts on a nearby computer, and she squints her eyes to get a better view of it, and she goes, "Looks to me like we're going to be arriving Galactic Standard Time 4:47. Landing time takes about 20 minutes. Load out 5:30, 5:45.
Yeah, Nux just kind of like looks at the clock, and it's like it almost has no bearing on what he was planning. He was just kind of using it as a talking point. He's just like, "Thanks. Yeah, I think once we get there, I'm gonna try and seek out my orphanage if it's still standing."
And she nods and she goes, "Well, I think I might have something that could help you out a little bit. And I called you up here today because I wanted to, on behalf of the ship, Blue, thank you for your service while you've been here. We took you and your brothers on as guest cargo, but, while you've been here, you helped us out as if you were a member of the crew. Blue has kept me very much apprised of your eagerness to help, and because of this, I'd like to send you off with a parting severance. Based off of what I've been told, I believe 2,000 Pemcoin will suffice." At that, Captain Kor pulls a small square crypto wallet from her pocket and hands it towards Nux. "The credits have been preloaded." And like Nux, Blue's got a big smile on his face. He's like, he's known about this for a while. I've been keeping it a secret. And he's like, "You earned it, kid."
And then, wow, Nux is just kind of looking at it. He's just like, oh my God, Captain Core, thank you so much. And then he just kind of like looks at her, and he just kind of like, he like walks over. He's like, it took everything. It took everything I had to get those kids out of there. And you just gave them a second chance. He kind of like hugs her.
And she pats him on the head, like kind of awkwardly. Like she likes Nux a lot, but she's never been hugged before by a kid. And she's just kind of like, well, this, you deserved it, and I pay a fair wage. So, here you go. And then next to her, Blue's like, I must say, kid, you sure are gonna be missed around here. You ever decide to change it up and join us Roughnecks back out on the old Star Road, please don't hesitate to reach out. And he like hands you a little long call digicard, which you can use basically at like any long call Nexus station to like plug into any of their things, and it'll like immediately send like a direct link to the ship. They won't get it instantly. It won't be a live conversation, but you'll be able to send messages to them wherever they are.
So yeah, he kind of like holds the card, and he's just like, you guys, and he like starts tearing up a little bit. He's like, coming from where we came from, this is too much kindness. I don't know how to repay you.
And Captain Core goes, you earned it. That wallet's got a digital address encoded within its database ledger. You can reach us there. We won't get it while we're hauling, but I'll check the messages every time we dock. So if you need us again, or you just need a job, or Blue goes, you just need someone to talk to. Captain gets up from the diagnostic station and walks over to take a seat in the piloting chair. As she walks, she says, "Oh, all right. Let's get down there and deliver this coolant. Oh, and Alex, good luck out there. It's one hell of a mean galaxy."
And Nux kind of turns away from her, and he's just like nodding. He's just like, I know. And then he leaves.
Okay. Once in the cargo bay with his brothers, Nux brings their attention to a starport window, revealing to the boys their first look at the quickly approaching Chinson. This is the world as you're coming in. So as you can see, it's not Odessa. And then this is what it looks like as you're flying in here. The planet is smaller than Odessa, and far from the lush, vibrant green of that world. Having been one of the most contested worlds during the corporate wars decades before, much of the rocky planet is pockmarked by massive craters and gorges. For miles surrounding the planet's main colony, Yamina, starships from both the PMAC and USAW lay scuttled, wrecked, and destroyed. If Nux didn't know any better, he'd assume that he was flying towards a designated junk world. At one time, Chinson was one of the largest independent colonies in the Outer Rim, with a population around 250,000. Now, under PMAC rule, the colony sits just over 50,000. Growing closer to the planet, visions of the destroyed ships recall memories of the boy's time scavenging within them. He'd occasionally encountered dangers, the majority of which were usually losing his grip or footing while climbing. That danger had in no way prepared the boy for what he'd experienced in his time off world, like he'd so naively thought that it would at the time. Remembering it now, he couldn't help but laugh at who he'd been before. How foolish he'd been of the wider galaxy and the perils it posed. Looking down at Edward, Eric, and Eli, Nux nodded to himself, vowing not to let these boys experience that same disillusionment. For them, at least, he knew what he had to do. For himself, well, that was another question entirely. After safely landing at the city's spaceport, Captain Core ordered the crew to depart the ship together. As they did so, she went off with Blue to fill out local registry paperwork and inquire about refilling. As Nux, Towel, Blanket, and Rag walked away from the ship, Eric said, "Everyone take a picture in your head. That way we won't forget it." This made Eli sad, who began to tear up as he waved goodbye to the ship. "Goodbye, ship. You were a good ship." Nux watched then as, reaching out an arm to put her on Eli's shoulders, Edward said to his brothers, "That was a good ship, huh? Did you see how many ships were on this planet, though? There's so much to explore here. And with a sniffle, Eli nods and wipes a tear from his cheek. Yeah. What does Nux say to the kids?
Nux kind of watches their display of solidarity, and he kind of like reassures them, and he goes, "You're not going to forget that ship, but I think there's a lot here for us." And he kind of like pulls them away.
And Eli kind of looks up at Nux and then looks back at the Atalanta one last time, and he goes, "But that's my first ship. Do you think we'll see it again?"
And Nux kind of like looks at the stars. He's like, "You can never know. You can never know out here. I hope so." And he kind of like cradles the credit chit, and he kind of thinks about it. He's just like, "But I hope so."
And then little Eli's like, "Yeah, me too." And then, departing the spaceport, Nux leads the three boys onto the colony's main street. From here, Nux is hit with the view of roughly a quarter-mile away, the location where his uncle died, and Rom had fired upon the colony. The destroyed Ruby's nightclub, Maligan's grocery, and the Gallipol Marshal station had all clearly been rebuilt in the last 2 years, all bigger and better than they had before. The buildings, like all those on Shinsen, were squat and gray, built for substance and longevity over flair and style. Far ahead of him, colonists walked down sidewalks in front of these buildings, going about their normal day, as if the violence and chaos that had happened here only years before wasn't at the forefront of their minds. A new establishment that Nux knew hadn't been here when he'd left was a PMAC recruiting center. The colony had, at least as far back as Nux remembered, been loyal to the PMAC Galactic Core, but the people of this planet had always served in a support role. He'd known that if war came, the PMAC had every right to conscript colonists from their individual worlds. They'd reminded them of that monthly, but there was no war, at least as far as he knew. Recruiting people in peacetime wasn't something that he directly understood, and his curiosity at the site was hard to shake.
I think as soon as he sees that, he's kind of like looking for the colonial marshals, trying to understand what happened to the order that his uncle was a part of.
Yeah, he's not seeing anything. There's no Gallipol station. It's been replaced by like a PMAC,
like an outpost,
military outpost. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Nux kind of like he like kind of hangs his head. He's kind of like looking at that. He's hiding it from the kids, but he's otherwise like, what the fuck is going on? And then he's kind of like taking stock of the land. So it looks like it's been completely recovered from that the ship fall that happened.
Yeah, when Rom like just like laid down fire on the colony to give Sabrina and Victor a chance to escape. He wrecked like a whole city block. Yeah, and it's been I'm not so. Actually, you know what? Give me 1 second. I'll tell you exactly how long it's been. I've got the timeline here. I don't want to just say some bullshit. All right, August 30th, 2175. And what did I say today was? So August 30th, 2175. And I said today was December 28th, 2177. So it's been just over 2 years. So I think as Nux is walking through this area, he's taking a look at what used to be, and he's remembering his friend who he ends up getting cash from, and wondering if he made it out. Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As Nux is reminiscing and having these thoughts, the refreshingly familiar air on Shinsen was cool, and a pleasing, crisp breeze washed across Nux's face. He knew the feeling. He knew that wind. He was like, ugh, why is it so cold here? Eli shouts, rubbing his arms to warm them up. This place is nothing like Odessa. It's so ugly and cold. I don't like it even if it does have a bunch of ships to explore. I want to go back home. And like picking up on his younger brother's complaints, the middle child, Eric, nods his head and he goes, this place is so ugly. Everything is sharp and gray. Odessa was much prettier. I don't know about this, Nux.
And Nux just kind of like chuckles. He's just like, I think it'll grow on you. Remember what you were doing when you were on Odessa?
Yeah, I mean, we were scrapping, but like, this just looks like it's only scrapping. Odessa had nice parts too.
Yeah, seeing nice parts from afar and not having a future in them isn't a future, kid. Nux is trying to like pretend to be older than he is, like thinking about what an adult would say to him if he had that same kind of obstinance.
Well, I mean, does it at least ever get warm here?
He's like, you're outside right now. It's warm in all of these buildings.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll give it a chance.
During their 11 months in space, Nux had thought plenty of what he would do with the three boys upon arriving to Chienson. After his parents had left, he'd only spent a few months living with his Uncle Arthur. During that time, the young Nux's explosive emotional state had been too much for the man to handle. Arthur had never wanted children, never intended to marry. He'd once told Nux that the law was his lover, and that while he would always be there to help guide the boy from afar, Officer Morgan's first duty was with the Gallipole. So it happened then that Nux was delivered by his uncle to Keeper Sif, head worship of Our Lady Wake, an orphanage at the edge of the city. Initially founded by the Church of the Divine Void, the orphanage overseen by Keeper Sif prioritized education and development for roughly 150 children, give or take the year as some aged out and others arrived. Other than the typical grammar, mathematics, and history lessons, children at Our Lady Wake were cultured in the religious doctrine preached by the Divine Void. This was a belief that had begun hundreds of years before on Earth, and at that time had been known as atheism. Like all dogmas, however, things can warp and change over time. What had begun as an understanding that science should be held above all belief at times, that there was no afterlife, no gods, no magic, and no miracles, had upon reaching the stars and traveling to other planets changed entirely. Atheism as it was on Earth still existed within the minds of countless millions throughout the galaxy. Unchanged, same as it ever was. But one specific sect of believers took the viewpoint to a different level. To the Church of the Divine Void, atheism became the belief that the ideal of an absolute nothing is the truest, most sought-after state of existence. Nothing is there when we die. Whatever legacy we leave behind in life will be forgotten. Everything ends, and nothing anyone does matters, because entropy is eternal. While growing up with these studies, Nux had liked his teachers and friends well enough, but personally never ascribed to the religious teachings. When Nux had lived on Chienson, he'd never seen any miracles or gods, but he had to believe that his parents leaving him behind wasn't for nothing, that they'd had a reason, that there was some purpose to it. Believing that nothing mattered meant that he hadn't mattered to them, and he knew that wasn't true. He knew that deep within his heart. In the time he spent off Chienson, he'd seen things that had defied logic, that had defied evolution as he understood it. Returning to Chienson now, he knew that Our Lady Wake would be the safest place for his little runaway siblings. They'd have beds of their own, food 3 times a day, friends, education, and, most importantly, adults actually experienced in caretaking. In the 10 months that he'd spent with the 3 in space, in the year that he'd spent with the 3 in space, Nux had explained to the boys the doctrine of the orphanage, and had been pleasantly surprised when all 3 of them had openly scoffed at the idea. Apparently, growing up on Odessa, secular belief in a lack of the afterlife was the norm. There were no churches allowed on Odessa. Edward had surprised Nux when he'd thoughtfully ended the conversation with, There might not be any gods on Odessa or any other planet, but that doesn't mean nothing matters. Everything matters. You saved us from the lava. That matters. To us, at least.
I think it sounds like he's kind of done a lot of preamble with them. So I think he's showing them in a way. He's like, well, now that we're home, you may as well see where I came from and how I became, I guess, who I am today. And he kind of starts like walking them along, and he kind of opens himself for questions and thoughts as they walk towards the orphanage.
Eric is like,
So, did you have like a favorite place to eat when you were here? Is there anything good, like any good foods here or anything?
Oh, that's cool. So Nux kind of has that like familiar pang that he had the first time when he was on Odessa and he was looking for the noodle shops. And he's just like, I know the best noodle shop. And then he kind of thinks about it. He's just like, you know what? Let's eat there for dinner. Because he's like looking at the clock, right? It's like 6 p.m. right now, right? So
yeah. They're all kind of like, yeah. And so the platform to the city rail is mostly empty. Very few people from the spaceport sticking around long enough to venture into the city. So the spaceport's like outside of the city, and then you take a rail. For most, Chinsen was little more than a fuel station on their way to better places. After loading up on an empty tram car, the four boys wait patiently before the doors close and rocket them across the dirty landscape of wreckage below. On a steady track, the tram soars over nearly endless wasteland of crashed starships, vehicles, and space stations below them. Countless sparks emanate up from the shadows as thousands of people mine metal and harvest machine parts for the colony's off-world sales department. Getting closer to the town, plenty of residential and business locations begin to appear sporadically.
I think before we get to that point, he kind of like looks over and he kind of motions to the kids. He's like, look, that's the last ship I worked on. It's still here. Look how big it is.
And like all three of the kids like turn around in their seats and like smash their faces up against the glass and are just like enamored, like looking at this view, just like, wow. Edward's like, did you ever get lost out there?
He's like, you do, but there's technology that helps you get back home.
Oh man, are we gonna get to go out there?
And then he kind of like looks at him like he's like knowingly. He's like, I mean, do you want to?
Probably.
He's like, well, maybe. We got to eat first.
And as the tram passes over this area into the city core, things start to become more metropolitan and dense. The stark reminder of colony equality hits Nux like a freight train. He'd never left Chinsen before the Reapers had come. He'd always assumed that most colonies had looked like this. After seeing how clean and well ran Odessa was, part of the boy's heart hurts to know that because of war, his people were denied such societal growth. His uncle had told Nux stories about how nice the colony had been before the corporate wars, but he'd never seen it himself. As the tram approached the central core platform, Nux recognizes a few buildings and places beneath him as his gaze falls upon the storefronts to a few locations that everything destroyed by Rom's barrage seems to have been rebuilt. A couple other locations that you recognize from bringing back from Book 1, Domestic Annie's Domestic Animals. Cord and Winwood Clothing Outfitters, Infinite Flavors, the Neonet, which is so Domestic Animals is Smartimals. The clothing is clothing. Infinite Flavors is a whole little food court of corporate fast food options, similar to how like it was all corporate food on Yajilosin. Paid public access to long-range communications is the Neonet. And then there's a building called Ender Fire, which is a black market weapon shop. Then there's a place called Adventurous Needs, which is a...
Wow, so you're pulling out all the storefronts from the shop night.
Yeah, this is like straight up OG Book 1. Like
you remember how we did that back in the day, all the shop nights?
Yeah, the Reapers went to these places. And then Duro's Adventurous Needs is the guidebook. So yeah,
guidebook?
Yeah, like equipment and weapons and stuff from the guidebook.
Okay.
So you've got a Smartimal shop, a clothing shop, a food place, long range communications, a black market, and a like just regular shop.
I think true to his word, I think we should probably invent a noodle shop. I think we should just call it Fresh Nudes.
Okay, and that'll be inside of the Infinite Flavors Mega Mart.
Oh, okay. So it's like a food court. Okay.
Yeah. And it's called. Cool. It's called. What is it called?
Fresh Nudes.
Fresh Nudes. Yes.
With 2 O's.
Amazing.
So he kind of walks them through, and he's kind of like showing them sights and stuff. He's also taking deep stock because he's realizing that seeing all of these storefronts the way that they are is giving him a lot of ideas about how to prepare these kids for the future without him.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, he aims for fresh nudes. He's like pointing out, pointing out like a little arcade or something. He's like pointing out this. He's just like, we got to eat first, but we're gonna be here a minute.
They're all like pretty excited. They're feeling it. I mean, even though they're not really digging that it's not as beautiful as they hoped it would be, and that it was not as warm as they hoped it would be. The fact of the matter is that you guys are children and you were stuck on a ship for a year. So being in a place where there's any kind of fucking commodity and or capitalism, they're feeling it. So
yeah, and was it Eli or Eric that was feeling about the cold?
Eli, the littlest one.
So he as he's walking to fresh dudes, he's like, I know these noodles are gonna warm you up real good, but how warm is it in here, right?
And he's like, yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's pretty good.
He's pretending to be an adult too. Okay.
And so what noodles do you all order for the kids? Because these 3 kids have no preference on noodles as they've never had them before.
Okay, so he kind of like looks around. He's like, all right, who wants something spicy?
And they all raise their hands.
And he's just like, how spicy?
This spicy is nuts. We can do it.
So Nux like leans into the chef, and he's just like, because let's just say it's a Blade Runner,
give me 3 butter noodles.
Yeah, he's just like, you know what? Give me the mildest spice you possibly got for. And then he kind of like looks around. He's like, who wants? Actually, what meat is available on these colonies?
Okay, so this being a war-torn world, I would say that they probably get their food from deliveries. So this is basically going to be all synthetic fast food type stuff.
Okay, so it's basically like a replicator level meat. So he just kind of picks, and he's just like, okay, these boys are growing, and they claim they like spice, and he like leans in, just in the old Tianjin way. He kind of looks at me, he's just like, not too much spice, and then he orders 4 bowls for each of them.
Okay, awesome. The fucking food's amazing. I mean, like Nux said that this was his favorite place before. When he tastes that first fucking bite, it's just memories just overwhelming him. Him sitting on one of the benches outside of the business with his uncle, and eating the hot spice with himself for the first time.
Oh, and then he pictures himself sitting with Ramsey and Catch, and throwing some nudes at Catch, and that's how they first started bonding.
And Catch just gobbles it up. He loves the shit out of the fucking fresh nudes.
So maybe as he's seeing these memories, he kind of like tears up a little bit, because he realizes none of those people are around anymore. He's eating these noodles that he has loved since time immemorial. Probably his uncle showed him this place because that's the only way he would have known about it, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe his parents did, and maybe his uncle took it over. His uncle took it over to be like, oh shit, this is the only way this kid has an attachment to his family. And now he's realizing that every single person that he enjoyed this place with is fucking gone. Like, that's crazy. And yeah, like, so maybe he's seeking out Ramsey, but the point is he doesn't know Ramsey exists at this point.
He saw a building fall on Ramsey. Okay. So as far as he knows, he's dead.
Yeah, and then outside of that, it's like fucking Catch. He has no idea what has happened to him because even though he trusted him to Karina, he actually has no fucking clue what's happened to this fucking fox. But yeah, I think like he's just like he's in his feels while he eats these noodles and like tries to relive some part of his blissfully ignorant childhood.
Yeah. So as they all kind of finish up their noodles and everyone tosses the food in a sort of like burn disposal. It's like a trash can, but like when you toss the food in, it's just like and like burns it up.
Yeah. So Nux kind of like leans into them and he's like, I hope you guys like dinner.
That was awesome, Nux. That was so good.
And then Nux he's like struggling with his words. It's clear that he's kind of becoming emotional.
Yeah, are you okay, Nux? What's wrong?
When I left this colony, I was in a bad place. Maybe I haven't told you the details, but the reason I was even able to save you is because I had to leave this colony through violence.
What do you mean?
So he kind of like leans in. He kind of like hops. He goes down to one knee as he kind of like motions to bring them in. This colony kind of made me who I am in more ways than one, and I think it will be a good home for you guys.
And then Edward's like, well, you're awesome, Nux, so that's pretty cool. I wouldn't mind being like you. You're pretty cool.
He kind of like nods sagely to Ed, and he's like, Ed, you're gonna be the new Nux.
He's like, what do you mean?
And then Nux kind of like looks at all three of them, and he goes, okay, look, I'm not ready to be number one. I'm not ready to be a dad. There's a lot I need to tell you about why I left this place and how I got to you, but you should know that this place is the best of me, and I think it will bring out the best in you.
And they like kind of look at each other and look around the streets. Eric, the middle one, is like, well, we trusted you so far. And I mean, so far it's been pretty cool. I liked the Atalanta, and I don't know, maybe we can get used to heat lights. It was pretty warm in there.
All right. So Nux kind of goes, where I'm taking you is probably the warmest place in the colony. And he kind of like motions for them to follow along.
And like when he says that it's the warmest place in the colony, he visibly sees like all of their faces like kind of light up. Because, I mean, I'm making a big deal about the weather, but like it is realistically probably about 59, 60. But like they grew up where on a world that never dropped below like 74, you know? So,
wow, so 50 is nothing, and even to them it's cold. But
right, yeah,
cool.
they're struggling because they kept it warm on the Atalanta because it's so fucking cold in space, you know? So, moving through the city core with the three younger children, Nux is struck at how little has changed in his absence. The streets are filled with destitute, disabled, and homeless. The buildings are caked in dirt and rust. A soundtrack of heavy industrial machinery mixed with countless different music sources from within dwellings and businesses filters through his ears. This colony isn't living, but it is surviving. From behind the boys, Nux hears the dignified voice of someone yell, "Out of the way, kid!" And like shouldering past Nux and inadvertently knocking Eli to the ground. A large woman runs past at a furious speed. "Hey!" he yells. And she's been enhanced in more than one place by robotic alterations. One of her arms is metal. As she runs, and one of her eyes is metal. As she runs further down the sidewalk, Nux sees pumps of steam jet out the back of the woman's ankles as she leaps onto a roof above. Behind Nux, more shouting fills the air, and as he turns, the boy watches a group of 3 military-armored Gallipol officers turn the corner. So the Gallipol still exists, but they're militarized now. The heads swivel in every direction. One of the men yells towards the crowd nearby, "The woman who just ran through here! Where did she go?" None of the crowd responds at first, but eventually a few point in Nux's direction. The group splits up to scan the area. One of the officers walks past, stopping only feet from the group. The officer's helmet swivels to fall upon Eli, who pushes himself up with a grump face, saying, "Stupid lady, push me over, I'll push you over." Kneeling down next to Eli, the officer speaks through digital voice and their mask. "Hey there, little guy. Did you fall down?" On his face mask, a digital flashing red and blue smiley face stares back at the kid. Unsure about the officer, Eli turns away from the person and steps behind Nux, still rubbing his knee.
Nux smiles to this officer, realizing it's the first time he's felt comfortable in the realm of authority. And he just points to the rooftop and he goes, with a smile, "She went that way."
Oh, shit, okay. So the police officer is like, he like presses like the side of his helmet and like you don't hear him say anything, but within 10 seconds the other 2 officers come out from like the alleys behind him and they join him and they all surround this building, and like one of them climbs up on the roof, and like all of a sudden you hear this woman just like yelling out like, "No, you're not gonna take me, you're not gonna take me, you're not gonna," and then like you see her get like thrown to the ground off the roof, and like 2 of the other cops like hop on her and put her in handcuffs.
she starts yelling out to the crowd. She's like,
They're doing this to me because I didn't pay for a permit for a food cart. This is because I didn't pay for a permit. Look what we've let this colony become.
and like one of the officers just kind of like pulls out his like little stun baton and like hits her on the side of the head, and he's like, shut it up. And she's just like, and they like lift her up, and she's got some blood coming out of the side of her lip, and they just kind of like drag her off down an alleyway, like away from everybody. And the kids are like,
What was that? What was that?
And then Nux kind of like looks at everything, and he's realizing that his perception of what his uncle did may not be with the reality of what the colonial marshals do. So he kind of like looks over, and he's like thinking about the choice that he just made and how it ended up in this woman being detained. And he realizes that he was hoping for a sense of valid justice, but isn't sure that that's what he's seeing on this colony. And it makes him think about everything that he's been through and how there's been a lack of morality in so many of the choices that he's been forced to make. And he kind of like looks at the kids, and he's just like, I don't want these kids to have to make those same choices. So who was that just spoke? Was it Eli?
it was Eric.
So he kind of looks at Eric, and he's just like, hey, so things out on the colony require order. And he just kind of like looks around as, the crowd is like milling about, taking a look at the woman being dragged through. And he just like looks back at them, and he's just like, in situations like this, you can't breed chaos. And he kind of like looks over, and he kind of sees her like dragging her limp, like robotic enhanced body out of the crowd. And he just kind of looks back at them, and he's just like, it's better for you to get your sea legs first. And he kind of like looks, he's like looking around left and right as he's kind of giving his advice. And his advice is to impart to them that to follow authority blindly is a mistake. But if someone wrongs you or someone comes after you, then authority is the only higher power you should be seeking. And he kind of like motions them on to leave the scene.
Okay. It takes a while for Nux to guide the kids over to the colony outskirts where the orphanage is. Out here, most of the buildings are dilapidated and treated as slums. When Nux lived here, the marshals rarely policed the area. His uncle would come weekly with deliveries of sundries for the orphanage. But other than him, seeing a marshal was a rare sight. Now, however, it seemed to Nux that there was an officer patrolling every few blocks. He noticed that they had also erected some kind of partition out to the Badlands, restricting access to colonists. It wasn't anything anyone could walk past, but it sure hadn't been there before. Outside of the massive orphanage front entrance, a class of 17 sits on a grouping of benches, listening to their teacher explain geometry. The children are all roughly 10 years old, and as the four of you pass by them, Edward blushes when a girl with red hair waves at him. The nun, who Nux recognizes as Keeper Nyo, catches the girl's infraction and yells, Delia, eyes up front. With this, the girl turns back to look at the floating holographic projection board next to her. For a moment, Nyo lets her gaze linger on Nux for a moment. But she shakes her head and goes back to her lesson. Nux, who had never particularly liked Keeper Nyo, doesn't wave, and instead leads the boys into the large building. Inside the grand foyer, the kids walk through a massive, onion-shaped room. The walls are a smooth, pale, bone-colored shell leading up to a singular open point in the ceiling far above. In the center of the circular room on the floor is a gorgeous mosaic of a black hole. Nux remembers that when it rains, a small pool would fill within the hole. The nuns would dye the water black and use it to anoint the children after weekly mass. It wasn't his favorite place. When the younger boys see it, Edward and Eli shy away, but Eric's eyes go wide and he says, "Whoa, that's so cool." It's like a black hole in space, not like just like a black hole in the ground.
It's like floating in space, but you can't see through it or around it, right?
Right, yeah. And it's like concave. Like the whole part is concave. So like maybe like 4 feet at its like deepest, and like when it rains, it fills with water. So like it creates a pool, and like they use it as their fucking like baptism fucking spot.
Yeah, and Nux kind of looks at it, and even though he found some sort of fear from it before, he's thinking about just what he's experienced in the years that he's been away. He's looking at it with a sort of new reverence, because he kind of sees the perfection in it. And who was it that was freaked out by Eric?
Eric or it was so the oldest and the youngest both shy away. The middle one liked it. So Edward and Eli were like no, and Eric was like wow.
Okay, yeah. So he kind of like leans in with Eric, and he's like, yeah, it reminds you of a lot, doesn't it? And he kind of like waits for Eric to reply.
He's like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
He's like, yeah. So he kind of like leans down, and he motions the other boys to join him, and he's just like, this isn't that different from what we've experienced, is it? And then he kind of waits to see what they say.
And then the littlest one is like, is it a black hole?
He's like, no, because this hole can be filled, and with it, we are all baptized. So when you really think about it, what is that saying to you? And he kind of asks the kids to see what thoughts they can form in the query he just gave them.
And like they all kind of sit and think for a moment, and like a couple seconds pass by, and they're all staring down into the center of the black hole. And like Nux almost starts to think that maybe like the question didn't land, and then like Edward turns up and looks at him and he goes, "That all of us are one?"
And he just kind of like looks back at him, and he like nods, and he's like, "We're all together. We're all together in everything, and in our strength is power." In his opinion, what he's seeing right now is that Edward and Eli's reaction are what he used to feel about that, right. But let's say when he walks up to this void, he starts seeing it in a way that he never anticipated ever seeing it. And he sees a sort of calming clarity in it. And he's surprised by this because what I think is really cool is you created that new Proctor, Neo. And so Keeper Neo, seeing her and then feeling that old indignance that he had towards her is like, ha, all right, nothing's changed here. They're going to do really well. And then he sees this baptism chamber, and he's just like, oh, wait a minute. And so maybe when they walk into it, he feels the reverence. He sees that Ed is not feeling it that way. Eli's not feeling it that way, but he realizes that Eric is seeing it the same way he does. As he sees that Eric is transfixed by it, he walks up behind him and he kind of looks at him. He's just like, it's an opportunity to learn a lot of really valuable lessons. And he's like surprised by what he's even saying, because that's never how he felt about it as a kid.
And he's like, well, you lived here. What lessons did you learn from it?
And then it's almost like a slow dolly cam zoom into Nux's face as he's like, I don't think I learned any lessons from this before, but now I'm realizing that this is everything.
But what do you mean?
So he kind of like looks down at Eric, he looks at Edward, he looks at Eli, and he goes, I just realized that we're everything. This is the same path that brought me to you, and you are all standing before it in the same exact way that I was brought before it.
Eric starts just like, he's thinking about Nux's words, and he starts like pacing slowly around the black hole, like looking down at it, and he goes, You mean like a circle?
I think you'll come to your own conclusions in time, but the key here is really that this speaks to everyone, no matter where you're from, how powerful you are, how unfortunate you are. And he realizes he's giving a mini sermon.
They all kind of like take it in, and they're looking at it. And then from over his shoulder, Nux hears the oldest, Edward, go, Hey, Nux, what is this? As Nux turns around, he sees that Edward has like walked off down a hallway, and like he's sort of like standing in the shadows looking up at this door. He's spinning around looking for Edward. He sees that there's like a hallway leading towards a church, a hallway leading towards a dormitory, a hallway leading towards a cafeteria, a hallway leading towards an amphitheater, And then there's a door where Edward is.
Yeah, so I think Nux kind of like looks at Eric and Eli and he goes, "You will come to your own conclusions over time. Maybe it's best we just follow Edward." And he kind of like motions to him.
And as the three of you walk over there, Nux has seen this door 100 times, 300 times, more. The doors are scavenged metal and have been laser inscribed with the creed of the Divine Void. And it reads in these very like fanciful letters, like reading down, like leading down from the top of the door to the bottom, and it's in the center of the doorway, so split down the middle. All fades, lives, societies, continents, worlds, stars, galaxies. Everything ends. We are nothing. All is nothing. Embrace the void.
He looks at the creed and he's surprised by how much it moves him. He's starting to realize that his mode of pacifism, it was actually drawn on the learnings that he got as a kid, and he just forgot them because the void is peace. And so he kind of motions them to the door and he goes, "Y'all can read, right?"
And like they all nod, like, yeah,
So Eli, what's this say?
And Eli goes,
okay, all fades, lives.
It's limes, but close enough.
Okay, society, societies.
Ed, can you help him?
and like Edward's like, it's societies.
And he goes, societies. I said that. That's what I said. Continents,
Perfect.
worlds, stars, galaxies. Everything ends. We are nothing.
And he like kind of looks up at Nux and he goes, all is nothing?
What does embrace the void mean?
And so Nux kind of looks at them and he goes, the hidden context is that, and then he just kind of leans and he's like, all is nothing, but we are everything. And he just kind of like hugs them because he's like, he realizes that everything that he learned while he was on the colony was actually underneath him the entire time. And that his newfound interpretation of this, what is it? The Church of the Void?
The Church of the Divine, or the Order of the Divine Void.
The Order of the Divine Void, he actually has a new interpretation that is about the empowerment of humans in the face of the void. And so he looks at it and he just kind of like reads it back to them. He's like, all right, so listen, all fades, lives, societies, continents, worlds, stars, and galaxies. We know that, right? And he kind of like looks at them and he's just like, we know that, right?
And they all kind of like, yeah, nodding.
And he goes, everything ends. We are nothing. All is nothing. We embrace the void, but we are everything. And he kind of like looks at them. He's like, you don't have to know this now, because what I'm realizing is, as he like looks at them like mistily, and he's like, what I'm realizing is you will realize what this is telling you at an age when you're ready for it. And he kind of looks at the door and he turns them away. And he goes, let's get you settled.
So after a few moments, after Nux knocks, the door moves, pulling backwards slowly into the room. Once it's widened enough for a face to peer through, Nux watches as the elderly face of Keeper Sif appears. The woman in her mid-60s wears a glittering black robe that buttons at her neck and trails a few feet behind her as she walks. A tall black habit hat rises roughly 11 inches above her head, ending in a thin trim of white. She squints her eyes for a moment, looking from boy to boy, finally settling on Nux, who she stares at for a few moments before furrowing her brow and saying, Nikolai? No, this can't be. You died!
So Nux, he pulls his hair back and he like pushes his hair out of the way. And he like steps forward and he kneels in front of her and he does the symbol of the void in front of her by placing his hand at his heart and then creating a complete circle around his head before it comes back to his heart. And he kind of like kneels to her and he goes, I'm back.
And the look on her face is just absolute surprise and shock. And she's just like, ah. And like she opens the door, just like she doesn't even realize she's doing it, but she like widens the door even further. And she's like, everyone thinks you're dead. You and your uncle, they are graves. We all assumed you'd found your divine rest and returned to the void. To see you here, I'm conflicted, but please come in. Come in.
Yeah, and Nux kind of stands and he like nods, knowing that for all intents and purposes he is dead, and he motions the boys to follow.
Okay. The interior of Keeper Sif's office is terrifying. Gothic decor fills the room, from her chair, desk, and bookcases to the chandelier, couches, and rug. Combined with the bone shell walls and ceiling, there's a reason why the orphans call this the Nightmare Room. Following Nux in, Edward, Eli, and Eric all stick close behind him as Keeper Sif closes the door and leads the group over to a pair of couches. So first off, who are these three that you've brought home with you?
So when he hears that, Nux kind of leans in to them to speak privately, and he just asks them to come in and huddle with him real quick.
Yeah, they're all just kind of like standing there.
So he kind of looks at them and he goes, "Listen, boys, you have a choice now. The names you give her will forever be imprinted on you. My name is not Nux. It's a nickname. My name is Nikolai, and what happens is these orphanages can take a lot from you. But I think if you boys love your names, if you boys love these names I gave you, I think you should stick with them because they're powerful and they come from a very positive place. I'll have to tell you about it in the future when you're ready. But how would you feel about keeping your names?"
And Edward looks up at Nux with a smile, and he's like, "We already talked about it, Nux. We like our names. We're gonna keep them."
And then that's he has this moment where he's realizing like why he named them. He's back on the colony for the person that he was originally adapting their names from, and he feels this like sense of closure that only comes from something that you can't control yourself. And he starts tearing up, and he turns back and he goes, "Keeper Sif, this is Edward.
Hi.
This is Eric.
Hi.
And this is Eli."
Hello.
And they share, and then he kind of like hangs his head. They share Arthur's last name, Morgan.
And she nods and she goes, "Well, a bunch of new Morgans. I didn't expect that. Of course, you're all welcome here. We've got extra beds. You can take those if you need them. I hope you're staying. That's not even a question. I hope."
And then Nux kind of looks back at them and he goes, "I didn't get a choice, so I want to make sure that you have it. After my parents left this colony, I was placed here when they never returned." And then he kind of like looks around, and he kind of like looks at each of them, and he's like thinking so deeply about all the experiences he's had. He's seeing the random moments that he played with Catch and Ramsey out in the fields of the derelict ships, and how much fun they had. He's seeing all the random drunken nights at the noodle shop, even though they shouldn't have been drinking. He sees Arthur being so upset when they came home, and he's just like, this is the right place for them. He looks at them and he goes, "Do you want to stay?"
Edward looks at him and he goes,
If you think this is a good place, we trust you.
And then Nux kind of like looks at all three of them, and he goes, "You know, we come a long way from me thinking that it was about to be the end of my life to giving a chance to three lives that would have ended that night. I would love it if you guys followed in my footsteps."
And we'll stay here too. Are you going to stay here with us?
And then Nux kind of like looks at Keeper Sif, and he's like, "I think we have to have a conversation first."
and she very curtly nods her head.
These boys have a full belly. I think let's get them somewhere to sleep off this long journey of ours, and then you and I can talk.
She goes, of course. She gets up off of her chair and she heads to the door of the office and opens it and heads you guys back out into that main big foyer area. And after leading the children back through the winding bone shell hallways, Keeper Seif takes them into one of the dormitories for the younger kids. Nux had actually slept him in here years ago, when he first came, before eventually moving to another room for the older kids. There are 36 beds in this room, and a group of 4 kids aged between 8 and 11 all sit around a table playing a card game. They look up at the group when you all enter. Keeper Seif says, "Children, I'd like you to introduce yourselves to our new arrivals today. All right, this is Edward, Eric, and Eli. They'll be staying with us. Make them feel at home as the others did you upon your arrival." One of the kids at the table nods and waves towards Edward, holding up a holographic trading card with an imaginary pocket monstrosity. "Hey, have you ever seen one of these?" So this is fucking our version of Pokemon. What does this motherfucker look like?
The space Pokemon?
Yeah, like yeah. This is your chance to.
All right, let's say
satire.
I bet you winged creatures are probably pretty fucking rare in space. So I'm gonna say that this thing has wings, but the wings are furry, and at the end of each wing is a fully opposable set of hands, and in the center of this winged creature, where you think you're gonna see like some kind of like bird-like creature or whatever, it's actually just a super cute little ball with like a chibi face.
Oh, dude, that's so good. All right, so Edward shakes his head. No, or that's not Edward's voice. Edward shakes his head. No, and the boy holds it to Edward. Yeah, you want to check it out? And then, without hesitation, Edward joins the group and is quickly followed by Eric and Eli. Next to Nux, Keeper Seif says, "And they're off. I think I should tell you, we have a box of things collected from your uncle's apartments. We have a box of things collected from your uncle's apartment stored in the catacombs that we thought might be sentimental to your parents if they ever returned. Would you like me to have someone collect it for you?"
Yeah, Nux kind of looks at Keeper Seif, and I think he can tell that she knows he's been through a fucking lot, because even though she recognizes his visage, I'm sure she can recognize that he's been through quite a bit, and he's not quite the person that left the colony. He kind of goes. So over the course of the journey that he's just had, first he thought the colonial marshals were gone. Now he knows that they are here, and his perception of them has changed significantly based off of his interaction with that bionic woman or augmented woman. And now he's looking at Seif, he's looking at the Void, and he's realizing that his perceptions of the colony that he had as a kid, as a strict child, are no longer valid. So he's kind of like looking at it in a sort of deference to the only positive human relationship he had before he came to the orphanage. And he's like, to Keeper Seif, he's like, "I would like that."
And she nods and she's like, "All right, now I will." And then she like taps up to her ear and she's like, what was the? Oh, she's like, "Keep it park." And then like a moment later passes and like she goes, "Yes, I would like you to go collect box." And then like she taps on like a little hollow pad that she has and like swipes a couple pages and she goes, "Box X23407 from the catacombs, and deliver it to my office, please. Thank you." And then she's like, "Now, would you like to go have this conversation?"
And Nux is kind of realizing, even though she's been out of his mind for as long as she has, he's feeling this like intense wave of deference to her that he didn't expect. And he's realizing that he sees her more now as a peer rather than a leader, and he wants to talk. So he kind of like nods quietly and goes, "I would like that as well."
Okay. So it only takes a couple moments before you get back to her office, and she closes the door behind you guys so you've got privacy, and you take seats on these really beautiful, just like I said, everything in the room is gothic. So the rims of the couch is like a dark mahogany, like with just these really intricately curved spike designs, and the couch itself is like a dark red crimson, And you guys sit down on it, and you're kind of having your thing. And she goes, "So, as I said before, how are you alive, and where have you been all this time?"
And Nux initially starts seated at her request, and he kind of stands, and he kind of starts walking about the room, and instead of directly answering her question, he's starting to see people for their full length, for the full span of time that they exist. And he looks at Keeper Seif, and he's just like, "Do you remember when you left home?"
"It's been a very long time for me, my boy, but yes, I do."
And then he kind of like he's like walking around, and he's like, "So I never expected to leave home." And then he starts paraphrasing all the moments that led to his journey. First, how it started with the colony bombardment, seeing one of his good friends dying and being gifted this amazing Smartimal.
What happened to you on the day of the attack?
First, you hear the sounds, right? And then he's like going back into his head, and then you start seeing people running. Then you see where it's coming from, and then he's actually starting to he's picturing himself right back where it started. Then you see blood. Then you smell it. Then you're not sure why, but you're going towards it. Then you find your friend, and then he kind of like pauses when he sees this, and he goes, and maybe he's not in the best way, and he kind of looks at Keeper Seif, and he's like, "Do you know what happened to Ramsey Shade?"
She nods. She goes, "After the attack, Ramsey spent a few months in recovery. He's alive, but his family died, and he thought you were dead, and his little Smartimal fox was dead, and he had nobody. So he joined a local street gang. He didn't have anything, and so eventually he fell in with the release. Most of those street gangs are all wrapped up now with the Gallipol Junior Cadets. They work for them.
You made them cops and gangsters. I love it.
They enforce basically like a crippling new tax on all the businesses and citizens, orphanage included. It's a shame. I think your uncle might have been the last good cop this colony had. Things since your departure haven't been the same. The attack on our colony left us without local security ordinance, and when the PMAC sent their Gallipol marshals in to take over as a police force, everything about them just being openly corrupt had proven true."
I guess he's sad that things aren't the way he left them, and his heart isn't the way he left it here, and that the colony isn't the way he left it. But that's just growing up, right? So he kind of looks at her, and he goes, "Everything that happened after is it's also what brought me back. I've seen things I didn't know were possible. I've traveled distances I didn't know a child could. Keeper Seif, I've killed."
She listens to this with a stone cold face.
In his emotional journey, he was actually mostly emotional about first knowing that Ramsey survived. That blows him away. But he actually, when she mentions his uncle saying that he was the last good colonial marshal, that's when he breaks himself out of it to try and get back into his story, because he uses it as a crutch to sort of bridge the gap between the pain that he felt when his uncle passed and where he is now. But yeah, so he's like, "Keeper Seif, I've killed." And then when she doesn't reply, he paces the room a little bit more, and he goes, I've done so with vengeance, thinking that I was acting in the guise of revenge for Uncle Arthur. And I'm realizing now that was a folly." Kind of like looks in the direction of where the kids would be, and he's just like, "They're my redemption."
The void calls to us in many ways. Ultimately, we will all return to it. We will all be space dust. But while we are here, sometimes we are used by it in different ways, and it sounds to me as though on your journey, you were used as a angel of the void. You were called to send others home. There's nothing wrong with this.
And Nux kind of like listens to her, and he goes, when I was here, I didn't feel like I was listening to anything you ever said. And he just kind of like chuckles to himself, and he goes, "I saw Keeper and Yo out there, and I just remembered all these bitter feelings I harvested towards her." And then I entered, and what's the room called?
Her office right now?
No, the baptism void room.
Just the grand foyer.
Okay. And then I entered the grand foyer, and suddenly things started to make more sense to me. I think the void speaks to us all in different ways. And maybe the simple fact that I chose vengeance over the void is the reason I got mixed up in all this. And he just like has like flashbacks to all the violence he's experienced and all the turmoil. And he just like remembers the massive wound that he would have had completely inflicting his face for the longest time. He's just like, fuck. He's like, I never should have left the void. And then he looks at her and he's like, the one thing I need to know is that these kids are going to be okay. And to their point, I do not think I can stay because I don't think my journey is over yet. I have to see Ramsey.
And she's like, of course, the boys will be safe here. They will be offered the same protection and privileges that you were while you lived here.
And then he kind of like looks at her and he remembers the amount of money that he was given. And he goes, what can I do to ensure that they have the highest education and the easiest communication with me if I end up leaving this colony?
All donations are welcome, my son.
Yeah, he retains 1,000 of it. He donates 1,000 because he has in mind a time capsule gift that he wants to give the boys when they get to a certain age.
And she's like, "You are a blessing, my child."
He kind of like looks at her and he's just like, "No, the blessing was that you gave an orphan like me a chance."
If you are hungry, feel free to go find a seat in the cafeteria, and I'll have one of the cooks make you up something. It's not quite time for dinner, but I'm sure they're already working on prep.
My uncle's things.
She goes, "Oh, yes." And then she, like, taps into her ears, and she's like, "Keeper Park." And then she's like, "Yes, good, you found it, good. Instead of bringing it to my office, please deliver it to the cafeteria." And she's like, "Will do." And she goes, "She will meet you there."
Yeah, so Nux kind of like looks at Keeper Steve and he goes, "For what it's worth, if I never see you again, just know that your message got through." And he goes to the cafeteria.
He sees that she does that same symbol of the void that he did earlier.
Sweet.
In the cafeteria, what is the dish that Nux is eating as he's waiting for the box to be delivered?
Well, he kind of just like maybe he knows some of the things that the adult keepers would drink or spend time with. He's kind of trying to spend time in his thoughts rather than spend time eating because he just ate with all the kids.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so after the box is delivered, it's a white cardboard square with a lid, roughly 10 inches tall and a foot wide. And yeah, so Keeper Park, who delivered it, is a new orderly nun who Nux had never met before. And she wasn't very talkative. Like, she gave him the box and like nodded at him and then like did the sign to him and walked away.
Okay, so he just kind of like looks at it and checks to see who's watching him in the cafeteria.
It's completely empty, other than he can hear the cooks getting ready for dinner in the kitchen area.
Oh, cool.
But
okay,
otherwise,
so then he kind of like prepares like a space, and it's almost like he's like ritualistically opening it. You can tell that he's like taking super care to make sure it's like aligned to the table edge, and he's like leaning into it, and then he kind of like leans his eyes down and he closes them for a moment before he opens it.
Okay. After popping the lid, the first thing Nux sees is the standard Gallipol Marshall Blue blood-soaked undershirt that his uncle used to wear underneath his armor.
So Nux isn't concerned about the blood stain after all the violence he's seen. He's actually thinking he may have seen more violence than his uncle has ever seen in his short time away from the colony. He pulls out the shirt and examines it for any details that may indicate exactly how he died.
There are just seared holes like across the chest and stomach and shoulders. Nux, up on the left shoulder, Nux finds his marshal badge.
Yes. So Nux, as he holds the shirt open and he kind of like takes stock of what happened, he has like flashbacks of the ship. He has like flashbacks of Sabrina's death. He has flashbacks of Shay giving him a last chance, and he kind of like puts the shirt down, and instead of carefully removing the marshal badge, he rips it out of the shirt.
Fuck yeah.
He's kind of in a moment of understanding that even though violence is what got him his revenge, it's also what gave him the strength to become who he is. And he takes the badge and he wipes the blood from it and wipes any ash that may be left on it. And he holds it very delicately after he's ripped it from the shirt, and he carefully places it into his personal belonging.
Upon removing the shirt from the box, Nux sees a holo tablet. It's currently powered down.
Nux kind of picks it up and he looks at it. And he looks at the cafeteria to make sure it's completely empty, and he turns it on.
Light cascades across his face as the holographic image of a family photo appears in front of him. Uncle Arthur, both of his parents, and a 9-year-old Nux laugh together. Nux remembers this moment.
Nux remembers a moment when it was actually supposed to be his father's birthday, but Uncle Arthur came in and he talked about the promotion that he got instead. And so it became a celebration for both of them. And that was the reason that everyone was smiling, is because suddenly the whole family had so much to celebrate. And he's looking at his father's face, he's looking at his mother's face, and he realizes that he barely recognizes them compared to his uncle. He just aches for his uncle's demise because, in a way, regardless of whether or not his parents have died or not, they chose to leave, and his uncle chose to keep him. So he views him as his father now.
That's amazing.
And he didn't realize that until he saw this image.
That's amazing. So after a few moments, with the flip of a switch, Nux turns the holopad off and sets it on the table next to his uncle's shirt. Now you're about to have some fun. What are 3 things that you would like to find in the box before I reveal the final item?
After he sets the shirt aside, and the thing is, the reason he like the symbolism of him ripping the marshal badge out of the shirt is that he realizes that the marshal badge is ultimately what got his uncle killed, because he felt a duty to the colony. He takes that with a deep sign of respect, but also a little bit of resentment, because maybe if his uncle wasn't in that role, he might still be alive. And so that's the deference that he places on that. And but the thing is, the shirt with the blood, he carefully folds and lays on the cafeteria table, just in a sense of care for what his uncle would have actually worn. And the first thing he's hoping to find is the keys to his uncle's space Harley.
Okay. Yes.
And then as soon as he sees it, Nux clutches it. And he remembers the first time he rode on it with his uncle. And it was probably before he was 9 years old. It was probably when his family first got to the age where they were letting his uncle take care of him while they were out on their colony adventures. And he's just remembering this time that his uncle took him through the scrap yards. And he started to realize that he enjoyed being out there among the machinery and the silence. And that maybe his uncle was the whole reason he felt that way.
Yeah.
So he takes the key, and he holds it to his chest in a way that he didn't expect. And he goes, this can't be mine now. And he's thinking about this because the entire time he hit the colony, he's realizing that he wants to set up his younger brothers, for lack of a better expression. He wants to set them up for the best possible journey and experience they could have. And he goes, this is theirs now. I just have to find out when to give it to them. And he puts it aside.
Okay.
He's looking for a token that he gave to his uncle this night of a quote unquote town fair where they played their first target shooting game. And Nux said he was going to win his uncle a prize. And he was so terrible and he missed everything. But he realized that the game attendant knew what he was trying to do so much that he gave him a prize anyway. And so once he got that prize, he gave it to his uncle, and he's hoping to see that. Let's call it a stuffed animal. It's an elephant with a safari hat, an eye patch, and a rifle.
It's there.
And then he like, once he sees that, he can't contain himself because he's like just beside himself, because that means that the one thing that he knew that he wanted to be real is, and it is that his uncle loved him as much as he loved his uncle. The last thing, he's actually not sure he's searching for this. It's not something he's looking for because he has what he needs now. He has the thing that put him on the journey to become the amazing, scrappy ass kid that he is. In the key, he has the validation that his uncle loved him as much as he loved his uncle. And now he's looking for any indication that his uncle knew what happened to his parents. But he's not seeking it. He's kind of like just rifling.
So this will be the last thing. Having gotten to the end of the box, Nux pulls out the last item. A small, square, black metal box. On the top is a thumbprint scanner. Otherwise, the box is smooth and shiny, made of a metal that Nux isn't familiar with. It catches the light in odd ways, reflecting off places that it shouldn't.
Nux, knowing that he wasn't looking for this, is surprised by what it is because it's starting to remind him of things he's seen out in space. It looks too smooth. It shouldn't be that well machined. And his mechanic scrappy capabilities is just illuminating. He's just like, this shouldn't be here. And he kind of like pushes the box aside, careful not to ruffle his uncle's shirt. And he kind of like sets it on the table and he's just like really looking at it. So he kind of realizes that there's a biometric scanner on it. He's kind of looking through the box. Like, so he sets it down on the table and looks through the box to see if there's anything else that of relevance to his journey. I think if Keeper Steve said he was the last good cop, I kind of want her to like show him why. So in my opinion, what we should see is a collection of notes or a collection of visuals or newspaper clippings, articles where my uncle was like fucking badass. He was like the coolest fucking person in the world. And maybe he did shit that I didn't even know about. I think that would be great as a keepsake.
Yeah. Like a digital holo chip that he could slide into that holo tab that like brings up a whole holographic list of like all of his accolades.
Cool. Awesome. That's perfect. And so then once he receives that, he turns his focus back to this.
Before he returns his focus, what is the one big ass, amazing, greatest case that Nux thought was the coolest thing about his uncle? That was like his biggest.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, like what's the one that he swipes over to find and like be like, this was his best moment? Like this.
Oh, dude. Okay, I think I got it. So his uncle never liked talking about the corporate wars. He never liked talking about Jensen before that. But what he finds out is during the corporate wars, before the colonial marshals were a clear establishment, his uncle was part of a resistance group that essentially established Jensen in a way that it couldn't have existed without his efforts. He basically created a guerrilla group that was, well, let's call them like Holocaust rebels, like World War II Holocaust rebels. And what they did was they gained access to tunnels that were originally occupied. And by having done that, they created a bastion for the civilian life of Jensen during the corporate wars to survive the onslaught before the corporate interests finally left and they were able to establish law. And his uncle never talked about that. He never knew why. But then when he looks at the toll that it took, and they have a tally at the bottom of this article, and they go, for all of the lives that Arthur Morgan could have possibly saved, this is how many casualties occurred under his order. And then they just kind of show that the amount of effort that it took to create order for the Tientsin colony required the sacrifice of hundreds of civilians against the fatalities. And now he understands why his uncle never wanted to talk about it.
Jeez, wow.
So in a way, the colonial marshal stint was his uncle repenting for the violence that he had to mete out just to create stability. He's actually very proud. He's thinking about the sacrifices his uncle might have made, the choices he would have made. He starts like tearing up as he like thinks about it because he realizes that his uncle made choices that no human should ever do. But the choices that he made created a prosperous colony. And he kind of like looks at the cafeteria, he looks at the order, and he's just like, and it gave rise to me. He kind of like sits back, he pushes the box away, and he sits with his arms kind of cradling this new device, going, what else did he leave me? And he goes, I wonder if this is a message my uncle would want me to see alone. And he just makes sure that the cafeteria is completely clear.
Oh yeah, it's empty.
Does he know for sure, just by looking at this, that it's not, like a keep receipt or anything? It's literally just from his uncle.
I mean, she said it was his uncle's belongings. Like, she said that it was found in his uncle's apartment.
Okay, so he kind of like looks it over, he turns it over, and he's just remembering his days from scrapping, and he's like thinking about all the ways in to something, and he kind of turns it over and sees if there's any other opening other than the biometric scanner.
No, it's like you can't even see a seam.
Oh, okay. Okay, so he kind of looks at it, and he just goes, well, I hope he wanted me to see this, and he puts his thumb on it.
Okay, and then Nux hears a click as the box unlocks, opening a crack vertically. The top slides down to rest on the sides of the box, revealing within what appears to be some kind of a wristwatch. The metal is platinum weave and seems to have been carved from the inside out, leaving an unknown amount of overlapping layers within. On the upper wrist portion, a smooth oval of platinum rests horizontally.
So he opens it, the obsidian box opens, and it reveals a platinum case and then a platinum flat plate.
No, it's like a wristwatch.
Oh, a wristwatch.
It's like a wristwatch. It's a platinum like bangle, like a platinum like.
Okay. Like the slivers, but
yeah,
bigger?
Okay. like a really fancy like platinum sliver with a flat metal oval on top, like resting on top of the wrist part.
Yeah, so Nux kind of like leans into it, and he realizes that he hasn't actually seen such valuable precious metal in his entire life, and he kind of very delicately picks it up with both hands and holds it to the light to try and examine to see if there's any details about it that he can learn.
It's just like really intricate and like all of these different layers, like a clock almost.
Yeah, so he kind of looks at it, and he looks into the box to see if there's any other features or details that he can derive from it.
That's it.
And then he slides it onto his left wrist.
All right. Upon putting the platinum bangle on, Nux's eyes widen as the image of what's clearly some kind of advanced compass forms the image of an arrow above the flat platinum disc on his wrist, not as a hologram, but seemingly from the particles of air above the oval themselves. A sharp pang strikes somewhere in Nux's brain as a headache begins to boil and brew. A trickle of blood spills out of the boy's nose onto his lip. From where Nux is sitting in the orphanage, the arrow points north towards the colony Badlands. Far across the room behind Nux, the double doors open, and roughly 100 kids start filling into the cafeteria and piling up at the feast line and taking their seats at tables.
Nux quickly shuffles the objects that he pulled out of the box that he intends to keep with the box. He puts them back in, and he starts moving towards the edge of the cafeteria, seeking out Keeper Park.
All right, so Nux finds her milling about outside in the front garden foyer. It's all like death lilies and Venus flytraps and like other just like absolutely dangerous nightingale fucking wolfsbane, nightingale, all of these just like really nightshade. Really deadly plants. And she's out there just kind of like tending to them outside.
So he kind of walks up behind her, and at this point he's taken the wristwatch off, and he's not trying to illuminate it to her. How big is? You said it was 10 inches by a foot tall, so it's or 10 inches tall by a foot wide, so it's pretty big.
The box, yeah.
Yeah. So he kind of like looks at her. He's just like, "Can you return these to the archives at your earliest convenience, please, Keeper Park?"
And she goes, "Yes. Absolutely." And she takes the box from you and sets it on the ground next to her, like next to her little like watering jug.
Yeah, and then he kind of like looks at the garden and he goes, "Why do we keep these things anyway?"
She goes, all of these plants are predators in a biome that is so passive that you could never understand with the blinking eye that it is alive. But these creatures feast in a way much unlike their brethren. We believe that they are advanced culture to the biome of flora. They understand, much like we do, that leading to the end is the most value path.
And then he kind of like looks at the plants and he's just like, I never understood the point of this garden until you just spoke that. Keeper Park, I think you are a valuable addition to the Order of the Void.
And that now explains why Nux was subliminally okay with poisoning somebody.
I'll take it.
And I just pulled that out of my that whole thing out of my ass.
Dude, we are improvising tonight. Because
Yeah.
and the thing is, remember, like he gets here and he's just like, oh shit, I was on this path the whole time. I just didn't realize it, which is exactly how indoctrination works. So I love it.
Yep.
Okay, so he commands the box to Keeper Park's charge. Yeah. The sliver is off of him, and he's like holding it up, and he goes, I think I need to do one thing before we go on this journey. And he kind of like he's like speaking to the wristwatch as he says that.
Okay.
And so after that, what he tries to do is he can we go back to the market real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say Nux pockets the wrist. What do we want to call this? Is it a sliver? Is it
a bangle?
Let's call it the bangle. Okay. So he pockets the bangle. He realizes that it's drawing him in a place that he didn't expect. But he's also sort of feeling a gratification towards it. And so what he does is he goes to the market and he purchases the release of a Smartimal that is much like Catch, that he wants to bequeath to the kids when they reach a certain age, and he wants it to be the age that he was when he left the colony, which I guess was 13.
So he's putting in an advanced order.
Yeah, he's putting in an advanced order for a Smartimal that he knows will create value in their expression. And he's creating a little time capsule of goodies for the kids when they reach a certain age, and it'll have to be when Ed reaches that age, because he doesn't want to wait for Eric or Eli, because he knows once Ed reaches 13, he's going to be like, well, Nux said he'd be back. But yeah, so he wants to purchase a Smartimal with that 1,000 credits that he has. He also wants to give them the option to seek him out. He wants to create a ticket for all three of the boys, because I'm sure they have to go through some vetting or the orphanage process to try and catch up to him. But he wants to give them that option and the paid fare to sort of get off colony to get to him when they need to. And he wants to gift them the Harley that they will be able to ride at, I think, 16, and says, if you ever, and he wants to leave one note. And the note he leaves is, I know we started this journey in violence. I want to end it in peace, but I don't want it to be the end of the journey just because you landed on the colony that I came from. When you're ready, come find me. I will be waiting for you. And in the meantime, don't feel like you can't have a little fun. And he attaches the key to the end of that message.
So does he give that note and key to Keeper Park along with the box?
Let's say that all right, so maybe he goes on the adventure after he leaves the cafeteria before he gets to Keeper Park. He puts all, okay, that's a great point. Let's say he goes back to town to do all that, because it's not far. It's just the orphanage.
Because I gotta so Laszlo was 5,000, and that's Utah money, and it's doubled on the PMAX side. So like an animal the size of Laszlo would be like 10,000, which means that like $1,000 here for a Smartimal, you're looking at like lizards and fish.
Well, what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be full grown, because he's gonna have to be. He's got 4 years until he can even pick this up, right? So I think if we can purchase, maybe we can create a system where he can purchase, let's call them embryos, and then he's purchasing the embryo, and when it's ready, they can have.
Okay, that's solid. That's solid. Cool. So all what's the animal?
Let's say no. It has to be a fox. It has to. Catch got him as far as he did, and he thinks and let's say they've heard a lot of legend about Catch.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they understand what the Smartimal is capable of, and how powerful and intelligent and just super cool and super comforting it is. So it has to be a fox.
Domestic Annie's domestic animals. So
Okay.
as Nux basically enters the like kind of city strip where all of the businesses are, he sees Domestic Annie's domestic animals, and it's a squat gray building. There's a glass storefront. And he walks in, there's a ding, and he sees that there's like sort of an older man like leaning up against the kitchen counter watching a holographic television in front of him of some sort of telenovela. And when he sees Nux walks in, he turns it off and he turns around and he goes, "Hey, how can I help you?"
So Nux kind of walks in with the confidence of a spacer, someone who's been on colony for as long as he has. And he kind of walks in and he goes, "Do you remember selling a fox to someone named Ramsey Shade?"
That sounds about right. Yeah, could have been a couple years back, maybe.
And then
The Shade family has purchased a couple Smartimals from this location.
Yeah, so Nux kind of like puts the box down. He's like, "Yeah, those are the ones." Weird request. So Catch is mine now. I don't know if you've heard about what Ramsey's been going through, but you remember a few years back when Colonial Marshal Arthur Morgan was shot?
Oh, during the calamity. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so Catch has been mine for the past couple of years. Hopefully still doing well. So I brought back some kids on my journey, and what I realized is that a testament to your smart animals, your smart animals, is that they are so intelligent and they are so kind and so profoundly friendly that I want to make sure that these kids get the same opportunity to grow with an animal that I did. You think I could purchase, let's say, an embryo of one of these foxes for these kids when they get a certain age?
Of course. Do you have a yearly plan scheduled out? It's the cheaper the longer it goes.
Yeah, I think we'd love to make sure that they can receive a full-sized fox. Actually, and then he thinks about it. He's like, "Do you have the genetic information they gave us, Catch?"
And he swivels and he goes, "Yes, let me just double check. The calamity was a few years ago. Let me check." And he like pulls over and he rolls on a computer. Go ahead and roll a ComTech for me.
Ooh, and we are doing a ComTech, which is good. We are going to push that. I don't give a fuck. It's very important to the story. There we go.
Okay. So he taps the keys for a little bit, and he's like, "It looks like we do." And then he swivels the computer screen around, and you see this like digital scan, like that's like the grid body of the green digital grid formation body of Catch, and he's just kind of like displayed out. And as this guy, we'll call him Carlos, types on the keys of the computer, he goes, "We have a couple different options." And then he hits a button and you see like red Catch, like the Catch that you're used to. And he hits another one and it's like a white version of Catch. He hits another one and it's like a black version of Catch. And he's like, "There's a couple different ways that we can modify him. Intelligence is standard. That comes with all of them. What are you looking for specifically?"
Yeah, so he's actually very happy that they get to make this choice. And he goes, I want them to choose. These boys are smart, and I want to see them grow with something that they want to grow with. So let's let them choose. Can we defer it?
Absolutely.
And then he asks what the price of the embryo would be.
He goes,
over the course.
That's gonna be let's see. And he like types a couple of things up, and he goes, How long did you say you were looking? How many months?
I would like it to be fully incubated, to be a pup in 3 years.
3 years. So that's 36 months. Carry the 6 plus 4. 750.
Yeah, so Nux hands over his universal chit, and he's just like, "You sure you don't want to offer a deal to a teenager?"
This isn't my business, kid. Sorry. I just work
Can I roll
here.
manipulation on him?
Go for it.
All right. My manipulation is really fucking high.
Yeah, go for it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he goes, yeah, you know what? In the honor of the Shade family, all of them. So many of them took pains and struggles from the calamity. Each of them got hurt in their own way. In the honor of the Shades, I grew up with a couple of them. I'll go ahead and hook you up. Let's say 600.
Okay. He takes the deal. He thanks him for his time and says he would like a receipt sent upon pop delivery in 3 years.
Okay.
And then he pieces out and he goes, "Hey, by the way, Ketch is the best animal I've ever known."
He goes, I'm glad to hear it. Domestic Annie does a good job.
And then he leaves. Okay, cool. So that's great because then I can put all that stuff into the box and I can do the message from before, which is just, "Hey, this type of smart animal helped me so much in my journey. I wanted to be there for you. Come find me when you're ready." And then he puts all of the rest of the money in the box and says, I look forward to seeing you as adults. And he gives that box to Keeper,
Okay. Keeper Park.
Park, sorry. So after he passes the box to Park, with full assurance that she's going to deliver because the order does not fuck around, he walks back to the edge of the city, and once he's clear of everything, he makes sure he has all of his personal belongings on him. He's glad that he said bye to Keeper Seif on the way out, and he pops the bangle back on to find out where it wants to lead him.
All right. So as Nux had expected, getting past the partitions to the Badlands had been easy. There had been a pair of Gallipold marshals that were clearly supposed to be watching the area. After only 20 minutes of doing surveillance on the pair, the boy was happy to see them wander off for a smoke break. They had been none the wiser as the boy had slipped behind them out of the colony into the war-torn zone of the Badlands. This is where he had grown up. His parents had chosen to make their life out here, when it had been allowed at least. Only a few years after Nux's parents had left, colony overseers had mandated the area too dangerous due to toxic radiation and faulty structures, remaining the colonists who lived there to seek residence within the walls of the city. Growing up in the orphanage, it was here that Nux would spend most of his free time. Coming back to these streets filled the boy with an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. There were an untold amount of nights he'd been sure he'd never walk these unpaved roads again.
He's kind of surprised, even I'll defer to you when I try and pull some shit. But when he sneaks past the guards and he gets into it, he just feels this sense of just overwhelming familiarity. And he just automatically starts sneaking because he remembers having to do that all the time to get access to the highest value scrap when all the adults went to sleep, knowing that they would never have wanted a child access to these precious alloys, but he's out there knowing how to get through this very easily. The Badlands are an angular sort of, let's just call it an old comet fall or something like that, where something hit the colony so long ago that created these fissures that just jut out for miles and miles in every direction. But he knows how to slip down into them so well because he used to do it all the time as a kid. And so he kind of looks at the areas that he used to know, and he's checking the bangle to ensure that it's going in a place that he recognizes.
Okay, so as he's moving through the Badlands, what did he spend most of his time doing here when he would come here while he was growing up?
Are we going to say that the Badlands were actually part of the ship scrapping or no?
It's your call. Okay,
yeah, because in my opinion, the Badlands are where what would happen is a ship fall would happen. You'll see some ships being brought out of the atmosphere into a nesting position. And the nesting position isn't like a fucking docking bay. It's just a place where they're pretty sure the ship won't move once it's like put into the earth. And so the Badlands are a collection of fissures, sort of like the Grand Canyon, and ships being slammed into them into a position where they won't move so that scrappers can have access to it.
Okay. It only takes Nux roughly about 10 minutes of sneaking through the Badlands to realize where the compass is taking him. It's a route he's used hundreds of times.
Yeah, so Nux has he comes to the edge of this precipice that he has crossed more times than he can count, and he's just like, "How is this still the same?" And so he ooh, yeah, that's great. Let's say he lunges over this with an uncanny grace that is just befallen by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of uses of this pathway, knowing that he's always been so much lighter than the adults, which is why they can't go this way. And he flips over this ravine. He starts strafing this cliff, and he's finding that all of it is exactly the same, almost as if no one had traversed it in the entire time that he was gone. He's still checking his compass. So let's say he gets to the next pad, and he's like, "Is it really taking me there?" And he holds his wrist up.
And it is very much taking him home. What does Nux think and feel when he comes around the bend and sees the home that he shared with his parents for the first time in 2 years?
Yeah, so he rounds the bend, and how much does it look like what he remembers?
Well, it's been 2 years, nobody lives there, and nobody had lived there for 5 years before that. So it's getting kind of taken back by the land, you know?
Okay. All right. So yeah. So he comes around the corner, and he starts to see that the wear of the Badlands has definitely taken its toll on this. That even though his parents were supposedly well-to-do, actually looks like one of the most rundown places he's ever seen. And he just kind of like looks at it in the open field, and he looks back at the wrist. He's like, "Really?" And then he moves forward. I feel like it would probably be covered in some level of moon dust or something. So let's say he walks to the top of a hill to make sure that it's exactly his home, seeing that there are some other homes buried around it, but not quite as dilapidated as his. And he enters from a ceiling entrance.
Okay, like a skylight?
Yeah, let's call it a hatch, something like that.
Okay.
Like it's made as an entrance.
Okay. So go ahead and then now describe the inside as he walks through the home, and where does he drop into from the ceiling, and then describe what he first sees and does as he enters this house.
Okay. So he goes to the hatch, which he actually never used himself, but he realized that his dad used all the time. And he tests it to make sure it's secure and that it opens, and it does.
It creaks. It's like...
Yeah. So once it opens, he turns on whatever illuminating device he has. I'm assuming there's something on him after all that time on the ship.
He has a little shoulder, like a flashlight in strapped to one of the overall things over his shoulder. So it's like up on his upper chest, facing in front of him. So it's like projecting a flashlight out. It's not dark. It's not dark. It's probably about 7:15, but it's getting dark. And as Nux lands inside, he's in a hallway, and just a whole bunch of dust. There's just, it lifts up when his feet hit the ground, and there's just dust particles all through the light beams, and it's darker inside than it was outside because Nux had shuttered all of the windows back when he lived on this colony because he didn't want people to know that he was visiting here when he did come here.
Okay, so he kind of looks around, and he's actually shocked that it's in a state of advanced, I guess, reclamation as it is. He waits for the dust to settle a little bit, and then he moves to, I guess, the entryway or whatever would be considered the foyer or living room, and he starts scanning around.
Okay. So in the living room, as he follows the arrow, he realizes that it swivels and points to his parents' bedroom, which is off of the kitchen.
So Nux taking a look around, realizing that everything is actually as derelict as he left it. He makes sure the sliver is actually telling him to go where it's suggesting, and he goes, "Really? Again?" And he starts following its path to his parents' bedroom.
When Nux opens the bedroom door to his parents' room and enters, what does it look like?
The room is mostly covered in a light moon dust because Nux is realizing, in protest of them never returning, he left their windows wide open and didn't give a shit about what happened to their room. So he's looking at the piles of dust. It looks serene. It looks so peaceful. his heart is starting to beat faster than he expected. He's not sure why, but he's anticipating something that he's not sure he's ready for, and he follows the arrow closer.
Nux walks over and he looks, and the arrow is pointing directly at these double doors, and the double doors are mirrors. And Nux knows that that is his parents' master bedroom closet. But there is a reflection of himself staring back at himself. What is it that Nux sees in this moment?
So Nux sees something that looks like an adult to him. He steps, let's say there's a cascading sort of glow from the early evening sun, and it's painting a very stark shadow over his face. As he looks into the mirror, he realizes that he both looks very much like his father and also like someone he's never seen before. He feels like he's taller than he is. He feels like he's stronger than he is, and he's not sure why as he reaches to open the closet door.
Upon opening the closet, Nux finds a collection of his parents' clothing hanging on a rack. They, like everything else, are covered in mold and moon dust. As Nux reaches in and pushes the clothes to the side, the arrow fades from the platinum oval on his wrist, flickers, and changes into some kind of alien-looking alphabet that Nux has never seen before. A glowing rectangle doorway appears in the wall and unseals as it slides away, revealing a hidden room that Nux had never known was there. Inside, bright light thrums to life, beckoning Nux's entrance into the unknown.
Okay, I think I'm gonna. Well, let me know if you'll let me do this. But I think now that we know we're at the colony, and I didn't use this skill at the beginning, I'd like to see if Nux buried a weapon here that he can pick up in a case of emergency, and he's going to try and find that before he enters this void. And the skill there was hidden stash.
Okay, so his parents weren't violent, but I will say that...
No, but Nux is just having visited that area as much as he has. Like, he might have buried something there, not anything to do with his
Well, I was going to say, but his father was a golfer.
Okay.
So he does find in the regular closet, like at right where you're standing at the doorway to this thing, that like in the corner there, underneath some clothes, is his dad's golfing bag. And there's, 7 or 8 golf clubs in there.
Perfect. That's a great compromise. Thanks for working with me on that. All right. So he picks up one of the golf clubs and he kind of holds it bodily across his legs as he enters the threshold.
The walls of the room are covered in information on archaeological digs on worlds all across the galaxy in both PMAC and USAW space. Nux finds 2 computers, 2 desks, and a whole collection of filing cabinets in the center of the room. There are rough drawings made by the pair of what appear to be alien artifacts, devices of unknown origin or use. They are all colored platinum in a similar way to the bangle. Nux sees that what could be possibly a suit of armor, a gun, a space motorcycle, and an engine core. Reeling from this revelation, Nux stumbles around the room in a daze, examining blackboards, whiteboards, open manila folders, journals, and finally turns on the computer screen. Out of all a mass of these things, he struggles to understand. One word stands out multiple times among all of the advanced mathematics, geology, and scientific reports. Panthis.
So I think he takes a look at he's not too focused on what he sees in the computer. He's taking a look at the room and realizing that he may not have known what his parents ultimately left the colony for. He's starting to question whether or not his uncle knew. He's starting to question whether or not his orphanage knew. And while he's looking at all of the details, he's wondering if there's something he misses in the details that you just described. And let me know if I need to roll observation for that.
Okay, go for it.
So he's trying to understand if he's missing anything other than what you described in this deeply secret, also seemingly alien secret stash.
All right. So as he's rummaging around, he finds a button underneath the metal table in the center of the room.
Nux, knowing that he's gotten this far off of the sliver. He points the sliver at it and tries to see if it reacts to it.
Nothing happens.
He pushes the button.
A flat metal seal unlocks on top of the metal table and opens up, and inside Nux sees an identical platinum bangle.
Nux takes a look at the one he has, and he holds it like close to the bangle and see if it reacts.
Nothing happens.
He takes his bangle off and puts the new bangle on.
Nothing happens.
He puts the other bangle back on his other wrist, and he keeps them both on.
When he puts the second bangle on, Nux is suddenly just like racked with like his whole body, like this like surge of energy like through his body as these just like this fucking alien fucking culture and society just are like like all these like different images of this like silver raced humanoid, very highly technologically advanced society, like living their life. Things are great, and then all of a sudden the war comes, and like within this war with this other alien race that are these like animal human hybrids, and like it's just violence and death and flames and destruction and chaos, and then like it just and like all of a sudden it just all like goes away, and then like Nux is like sees that he's like on the ground with his back up against the wall, and he's looking up, and he sees that like there's this fucking like, similar to how there was an arrow projected above his wrist before, that was not a hologram, that it was a hologram in the way that it was like the matter of air itself was reflecting upon itself, now projected in front of him in the center of the room above the giant metal table, this large like 20-foot star map, and it is not of a galaxy that you recognize, and it looks like it just like leads this path to this planet, and like there's just these like blinking alien letters next to the planet, and as Nux stares at the letters harder and harder, they like shift into like English in and out, and he sees the words Panthus.
So Nux, upon covering from the mental fog that would have occurred with experiencing such a traumatic experience, looks around this room that his parents used to occupy. He looks back at the computer, which also says the word Panthus, and he takes stock of all of the. You said there were weapons and
like drawings that his parents made of what appear to be alien devices.
And he kind of like looks at both of his wrists, and he's like looking at these, and he's like, "Can you hear me?"
Nothing happens.
And so he like holds his wrists up, and he's just realizing that what's funny is he feels like he's a vessel of something larger than himself, and he feels like something is guiding him beyond his intellect. He's not scared of it because now that he's been as close to the void as he has, there is less fear in him than there would have been if he had encountered this as a child. And he looks to the computer, and he walks up to it, and he tries to access it to see what Panthus is.
From the notes that you can find on your computer, your parents seem to believe that there were remnants of an alien culture far more advanced than humanity that all point to the center of their society being a world known as Panthus.
Nux right now is, for the first time in his entire life, actually reading the notes that his father and mother have left for him. And he's just trying to learn as much as he can. He's trying to see if there's a larger journal that sort of catalogs their findings that maybe can teach him a little bit more about who they were and what they were up to and why.
He does find files about trips that they made to different planets within both PMAC and USAW space, including dates, and the majority of those were actually before Nux's birth, leading up until about his 5th birthday, and then they slowed down as it seems like they started to sort of hone in and focus on a specific path.
Nux kind of takes a look at all this information that he's gained, just having been out as a spacer for as long as he has before he came back. He's taking a look at what he can do to reference what he knows about space in general of the Killslayer quadrant to find out whether or not this path is in the Killslayer quadrant or not.
It absolutely is not.
And so
You aren't either anymore, by the way.
Okay, so just note.
Let me show you. Actually,
Yeah. So if we're not in Killslayer, I went back to my origins. What's that quadrant called? Or I guess that edge of space.
Let me pull up the map for you.
I do remember you. Yeah, you had like some drawing of this.
You are on Chiensen, so you are literally straddling the border, northern quadrant, straddling the border of PMAC space and USAW space. And your world is overseen by the PMAC, but you are directly.
Oh, the Killslayer quadrant goes between. Okay.
Yeah, you are directly on the border.
All right, so I guess what we're saying is that this new revelation of what's the name of the planet again?
Panthus.
So he's trying to find out whether or not Panthus exists within known space to his experience. That's a very fucking loaded question. So how do we resolve that?
He sees that something that they learned is that Panthus is not listed in any of the USAW databases, any of the USAW official databases, but there are rumors from the Pirates Guilds and space truckers who have talked to people who tell stories about this very dangerous and secluded world that may or may not exist where an alien culture survived. It's like fucking 99.9% of people think it's bullshit.
Yeah, it's like chosen blackout space. Okay. So once he sees the sort of preliminary data on this, Nux kind of like looks around and he tries to understand who his parents were, not what they were up to, but who they were. And he tries to see if he can find out any information about that.
And as he gets up from the table, all of a sudden, from across the house, Nux hears a door open. The oval on his wristwatch suddenly glows red. From the living room.
Which wrist is it? The
both,
new one or the
both
old one?
wrists are glowing red.
Okay.
From the living room, a voice that Nux vaguely recognizes yells out, unsure, Nux?
Nux takes a look around. He's holding the golf club the way he was. All right, so he has all the windows open. That's why the moon dust is in there. He scuttles to the top. He tries to exit the room through the ceiling or through a window to gain a better vantage of who's calling out his name and how the fuck they know he's there.
All right, so as he climbs up onto a sort of table to look out a window, he sees what appears to be the hover bike of a Gallipol marshal waiting outside. There's nobody on it.
Nux, he actually kind of relaxes a little bit because he's not sure how the fuck that bike got here and how it knows to find him. And he just kind of like looks around the room to see if there's another egress, a point of escape.
Just the window and the door.
Okay, so he's looking out the window.
Actually, like, so he's in the bedroom because this was a secret room. There was no windows in the secret room. Yeah, so he left the secret room and it closed behind him. He's now in his parents' bedroom, and that's where he looked out the window. So there is a bathroom with a tiny window, a bedroom with a window, both on the same wall, and then the door that leads out into the hallway towards the rest of the house, where the voice came from.
And he said, and you, it's for sure, it's vaguely familiar.
Yes.
Okay, so Nux kind of, he goes into Overwatch over the door, holds the golf club in a place, and he's just like, "Who is that?"
And you hear the voice say, Step out into the doorway so I can see you."
Look, I don't know how you knew I was here. I didn't even know how I got here. So, no, you have to tell me who you are.
And you hear the voice go, "You don't recognize my voice? Keeper Sif told me you were here."
Ramsey, bud, is that you?
As he says that, he like was at the edge of the door. He didn't hear, but Ramsey very slowly walked up the hallway's carpet and like reaches the doorway and like slowly pokes his head in.
as soon as Nux sees his friend, who can't be that much different than what he last remembered him.
He's wearing the pale blue armor of a Gallipo cadet, and when he sees Nux, his jaw drops.
Yeah, and then Nux drops the golf club. He moves out of Overwatch, and he drops to his knees, realizing that even though he chose a life of pacifism, he realized he was willing to be violent to protect his knowledge of what his parents were up to. So he drops the golf club and he goes, "I thought you were dead."
Ramsey just reaches out and grabs Nux and yanks him into a hug, and he goes, "I thought you were dead," and pulls him in for a hug.
Nux hugs him tightly, and he's just remembering the last time he saw him buried under rubble. He's remembering the fact that he gave Catch to him. He's remembering the entire journey that he had with Catch up to his point of sacrifice to release him in the hands of someone he trusted. And he goes, Catch is still out there somewhere, bud.
And like bright light just fills into Ramsey's eyes. He goes, "What? You saved Catch? He's alive?"
And then he kind of like pulls him up, and he's just like, I don't know if you remember what happened, man, but I came across you after the calamity, and you gave him to me, but I almost didn't even remember it when it happened. I got on the ship, man. I killed who killed my uncle. And I've just been out there, dude. I've just been out there. And he's like breaking up.
Ramsey just hugs him. And he goes, "I don't care what you did. I don't care what happened. All that matters is you're home, Nux. You're home."